This place kind of, defined who I am and where I was going to go, and it's kind of shaped me to get to where I am now. And so, I thank Corbs for everything, and we're always willing to do stuff for him. And whenever there's events like this, we're happy to come back just because he did so much for us every day that this is nothing.
Most of college athletes, certainly at the Division I, the highest levels, they don't give back to their schools when they go out and make a lot of money.
1, 2, and 3. Great. 1, 2, and 3.
This project alone, 60% of the kids that played for Tim contributed to it. And the important thing about that is the amount wasn't important. The amount wasn't important. And so this is a very, very noteworthy day.
Makes me feel like a mom who's overseeing a huge family, a huge happy family. And now we're building a home that keeps, as the family expands, our home is expanding. And the fact that they would come here and they would donate to this project and be excited about it is just every parent's dream.
We see this as an opportunity to continue family, continue the growth of a lot of people, not only the kids that are playing here, but the kids to my right that have helped establish this particular situation, which has been just a legacy of love.
I think what Tim will say is a lot of his first moments with the wonderful student athletes is not about baseball. It's about being a fine young person and growing into a really good student athlete on the Vanderbilt campus to go out and do really great things.
Coach Corbin is a second father to me, and he knows he can ask me for anything at any time, and that's why I love Coach Corbin, because he never does.
Someone asked me the question today, earlier, about what this project meant to me personally. Certainly emotional.
For Maggie and I, it's so gratifying. These will be the only boys we ever have. So, they're just different. And the fact that you can be exposed to them and be around them, and they give you the time coming back is, it's a luxury item. It's the paycheck that's not in the form of money.
I still feel like I'm in debt to this program and Coach Corbin. I don't feel like there's an amount of money that I could give that would, put me in the green. So this is something that I feel like I'll always be in debt to, is Coach Corbin and Vanderbilt University, and I want to give back any way I can.
It's pretty special, man. And I'd like to, you told me that you've taken a step-parent approach to coaching. Can you explain that?
In short, when you marry someone with kids, you learn to love someone else's children. And essentially that's what you're doing when you're teaching and coaching. Or you can choose to do that, or you choose not to do it. And it feels healthy to do it that way. And I enjoy it. I enjoy that part of it. And now that the girls are older, we look at our life as kind of a luxury item where it's almost like the step-parenting duties have transitioned over to Maggie, where she can look at these boys as hers as well. And so we just kind of incorporate that mindset and kind of the philosophy of developing fatherly ideas when you teach and coach, and just using baseball as the platform to do it.
And your family's expanded, and they said that 60% of your players gave, and a typical ratio is what?
About 2 to 3% is what I was told.
So that's unbelievable. And how many guys will come back to train in the off season this year?
Well, quite a few. We've built a...
When he says quite a few, he's being very modest. There's 36 guys coming back. Just think about that for a second. right? And I think a big part of that is this room right here. Can you talk about that room?
Well, it's the classroom. It's as a coach, so many times in any sport, we communicate in the communication circle, where the coach is in the circle of the unit, and because of the size of the numbers, they're around you. And I just never felt comfortable in that environment where you could actually have a conversation with someone and I'm actually standing behind you and talking to you. And I thought messages can only be conveyed if they can see the messenger's face and the animation that goes along with the message. So there was a lot of reasons for this classroom, but I think that was certainly the first one.
And you start every day in there for approximately how long?
I would say it's 30 minutes. There are days that could go 45 minutes, but I bring a stopwatch with me because I realize that a coach's voice can be tuned out, much like a parent, at a certain point. So I think the communication inside that room could be my voice, but there are days in there where it could be a 30-minute meeting and I don't say anything. It could be a silent meeting.
And it's kind of evolved, because to get to where it was, and you're still obviously going to continue to evolve it, it took you 24 years of coaching to get to where you're meeting every day. And I asked you about this idea of coaches that put a lot of emphasis and a lot of value on the last game. Mm-hmm. And was that the reason for this?
Well, it was one of the reasons, for sure. I think it was right around 2008, 2009, when we were experiencing some success, but coming up short at the end. And it just felt every year that, at least personally for me, it wasn't gratifying because you're losing at the end, you're losing in a regional, you're falling short in a super regional, and so on. And I remember having a conversation with Maggie, the last game, and watching the guys leave is a low point, because the finalization to any season is tough, no matter what. But she said to me, if you're going to live and die with your success just based on the last game, she goes, you're going to die a miserable person. You're going to have to find other ways to value what we're doing, what you're doing as a coach. So what I did internally and selfishly was change the target and removed the scoreboard as much as possible, removed the winning. So we got to that point, and we placed greater emphasis in a classroom setting. But the classroom setting, for me, kind of defines space. That's a closed space. The baseball field is an open space. But to me, the baseball field is their playground, and I really wanted it to be their playground. Not that we were void of teaching down on the baseball field, but it just felt it felt better for me to teach in front of them in that classroom there than when we hit the field. It was more motion.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because I was just down last week, mm-hmm. and I got to witness it, and it was unbelievable. He started, you guys have a weight challenge. What do you guys call that?
It's an Omaha challenge that takes place. It's kind of a finalization of a strength and conditioning program of the fall.
And then what they did is you had 3 pieces to it. You had a 60 minutes piece of Bruno Mars, mm-hmm. that was fairly current. You had this is the breakup movie. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, when Vince Vaughn goes into male mode, is what you called it.
I did.
Yep. And then you had an Eric Church song with lyrics. And anytime he asked a question, 3 to 5 hands shot up. And it was amazing to see how he paints the room. And then after that, you actually had different pictures of all the different parts of your facility, of what they should look like clean. And then you had your fall cleaning day where everyone broke up in groups. Talk about what happened then.
Well, the fall cleanup day is more of a finalization of our space, because we close down the space. It's the last meeting and so on. And we just group our kids for certain areas of the facility. Our facility is clean anyway. So when we leave at the end of the day, I mean, the facility looks like that. The chairs are pushed in, and the notebooks are on the edge of the table. You might think of it as being minutia, but it's just small little things that matter. Their locker matters. Everything's hung up. Nothing's on the floor. The stools are in. There's no paper. There's no debris on the floor. But we wanted to refine that space, and we do every year. And the kids just scrub the walls. They wash the windows, they clean everything in the field. They go to the dugout and wipe down the dugout, power wash it. Everyone has a hand in cleaning the facility before we put it to bed for exams. And that way we come back and it's ready for us. But they I think like a home, and they're kids, and it's their house, and we rent it. It's not ours. It's space that we all get to share for a certain amount of time. I don't take it for granted that it's going to be my personal space forever either. But what space we have, we take care of it, and we're proud of it, no matter what it looks like, but we take care of it ourselves.
And these are elite baseball players, hands and knees, getting the dusting off the floorboard. It was unbelievable to watch. And we were having a conversation about behavior and character. And I was talking with the psychologist, and I said, why do I prefer the word environment to culture? And he said, well, you're interested in behavior, right? I said, yes. And he said, well, environment is right now. Culture is over time. And behavior's right now. How do you interact with that?
Well, I like it. I share that thought. I think culture is something that's been established long term. Andrew brought Maggie and I over for lunch before we got over here, and we went to Chick-fil-A because of your per diem. And I just saw this map of the United States the other day, and they had all the fast food restaurants per state, and Chick-fil-A dominated the United States, about 70%. But we went there for lunch today. The line is out the door, but as you get in, the line moves quick, and there's an older lady that greets you, and she says, "Happy holidays." You get up to the register very fast. When you get up to the register, there is a young lady there, or a young man, and you see their teeth. They smile. They ask what they can do for you. Your food is served to you within 5 minutes. You're sitting down, everything's clean, people are wiping down the tables. That's Chick-fil-A, but that's a culture. That Chick-fil-A was in Missouri, but that Chick-fil-A could have been in Nashville, Tennessee. It's the same, nothing changes. But the people change, just like a team. They float in and out of the team every year, but the standards and the values of the organization never change. So it's consistent behaviors by everyone that's in the culture. So you can have success over the first year you take over a program, but I would say that it takes 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 years to really have a very strong culture, and then even more. And then the thing about it, and we were talking about this last night too, Brett, is I think you end up working, not necessarily working harder, but you have to reinvent it every year to keep it fresh for the kids, to keep it relevant. And I think staying relevant for at least, and I say older, I'm 55 years old right now, I think that's the greatest challenge, is to stay at the level of the kids in terms of what's on their mind, what are they growing into, what's fresh for them. You have to be exposed to those same thoughts and processes that they're going through. You have to make yourself them, because essentially that's who you're working with. That's how I see culture. I see culture as something that's very strong, but it's the standards and values of your program and the ideals of your program that are always in place, no matter who is in that classroom.
Yeah, and it starts there, right?
Well, I believe so. I mean, it does for us. I mean, and we've talked about this too. It's not to say it's right, wrong, and different. I mean, there are some coaches who have classrooms in a dugout, and that's fine. They do it differently, and they develop differently, and they develop fine. It just happens for me that feels comfortable. That happens to be my sweet spot, and I can't really tell you that I utilized it the way back in 2006, 2007 that I do today. And I want to utilize it better next year than I did this year. And that will always be the goal, is just to reinvent myself and reinvent the culture to stay fresh for those kids, so the program grows right along with it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes you you. Let's give it up for Tim.